Hello friends, it's Shari. Today I'm back with some springtime build a cake cards. So for my last cake video, I created cakes for our spring holidays, Easter and St. Patrick's Day, but today I'm doing some more general cards with a bee and a butterfly theme. So my first card is my bee themed card, and of course here is the Build a Cake and the Build a Cake add-on dies, and I'm going to be using the Hive 5 stamp set for my decorations. So I've already cut my cake out there. I also have those little honeycombs up there cut from gold sparkle cardstock. That little honeycomb die is from the Honeycomb Shaker gift tag die set. So let's start with the images first. So I pulled out all the images from Hive 5 that I want to stamp, and I'm stamping them on white cardstock in jet black ink so that I can do some coloring with my alcohol markers. And I'm starting out with my largest image, which is that beehive. And I have two shades of yellow here, a Y38, which is what I'm using right now for some shadows. And then I'm going to blend that out with the Y35. And when I did blend it out, I kind of lost that shadow. I don't think the difference between my two colors was quite enough for the look I was going for. It is very pretty, but I actually went in with an orange. So you're going to see me grab another one here, and this is the YR16. And I'm just kind of going in and adding. You can see exactly that shading sort of comes back in when I add that in. I could probably go back in with that Y38, but I thought that having a very different color helped a little bit more. And I'll be using these same yellows for my bees as well. Now for the opening of the hive, I'm just using a W7 and coloring that in. Now I'm back to the same colors that I used for the hive for my bees. I'm using that darker color just to add some shading, just like I did on the hive, and then I'll blend it out with that Y35. I really like an orangey, buttery yellow more than a bright yellow, so these are my go-to yellows. For the little honey dipper there, I just used a brown and didn't do anything fancy, no fancy shading. Back to the yellows again, the same colors, coloring in the honey jar. Then I have a BG11, which is a very pale kind of aqua color. I think it's the perfect color for some bee wings. And I'm also going to use it to color the label on the honey pot. Now for the little piece of fabric covering the top, I thought a pop of purple would be cute, but I didn't want it to be too dark. So I have a V01. I'm going to come in with a V12 and just add a little bit of shading on the sides because this is a cylindrical object, and blend that out. I'm also going to take the same purple and add some accents to the little party hat on the bee and the little pendant that will go onto the beehive. Then I'm pulling out all my other colors to color in those fun party items. So I have a teal, a green, an orange, and also the red, which I did not like the red on the party hat. So I actually stamped out another bee you can see there. And I'm going to color it to where the stripes on the hat do not have the red. So I've used the coordinating dies to cut them all out, and I'm actually going to go ahead and put the little banner on the beehive, which I just think is so cute. I love dressing up this little beehive with that banner. I think it's adorable. And then I'll just set my images aside for when I'm ready to assemble my card. Now I cut my cake from some yellow Spiffy Speckles paper, and then I'm going with purple for the plate, which I think is really fun, and then the honey. So what I did was I took my gold stencil paste, and I actually prepped two pieces of cardstock yesterday, let them dry overnight. So I have a piece of number 2 pencil and a piece of white. I wasn't sure if it would change the color of the paste, so I just made two, and you can see they're really curled up. So what I did was I just spritzed the back with some water to kind of loosen up the fibers. Then I'm drying it with my heat tool, and I'm just kind of working it so it flattens out a little bit and it's not quite so curled. I don't need it to be completely flat because I'm going to use that die to cut it out. So that worked out pretty well. You don't want to bend it too much because you don't want to crack your paste. So you just kind of want to work it easy. So once these are kind of flatter, I'm going to use that ganache die from the add-on die set and cut it out, and it is the perfect honey. It worked out so well. I love it so much. Look at that honey on top of the cake. I think that's great. So I'm actually going to cut out the white one too. I just wanted to see if the color of cardstock had any effect on the color. And I do think the one on white was a little brighter, but I think they both look great. You could also just use the cardstock. That kind of has a honey look too if you did not have the paste. I'm also going to cut the icing that goes along the bottom out of what's left over too, so you're gonna see me do that here in a minute. But first, I wanted to make some honey splatters on my cake using the splatter stencil. So I have my splatter stencil here and some sunflower ink. I'm going to grab a smaller brush because I don't want to completely cover this. I'm just putting some splatters on the right side here. Then I'm gonna pull this up, kind of check that it looks pretty good and move it and do like a partial splatter down here in the bottom left corner. And I think that looks so cute. Now, I did have just enough of the paste on here to cut out the icing that goes along the bottom. Had I thought about this originally, I probably would have spaced my die cuts a little better, but it worked out. And so now I can have some shiny honey along the bottom too. So I'm ready to assemble a little bit. I want to go ahead and add my honey ganache to the top. This is my favorite part of this cake, I think, because it just turned out so great. And then I can add my cake to my cake plate. That cake plate is cut from lilac cardstock. And then I will add my icing at the bottom. I'm just kind of checking, do I want the honey to be tucked behind? But I'm going to put it on top of that icing. So I have my little honey pot. That's going to go down here at the bottom with the little dipper as well. Then I can add one of my little bees here in this little kind of grouping of stuff on the left. And I have one of those little honeycombs, and I think these look like twills that you can have on your desserts that make them look super fancy. That's what this looks like to me. So I have one down here, and I will add another one to the top, kind of sticking up as well beside the hive. I'm going to go ahead and add that hive to the top, making sure I use liquid glue on this, even though I'm using liquid glue on everything, because remember, I'm gluing to that stencil paste. And then here is my other little honeycomb I'm adding up here. And I like the look of it kind of standing up and just wrapping around the side of that beehive. So just a little bit of glue at the bottom where it touches, and then I'm actually going to flip it over and just make sure the top is tacked to the bottom where it's tucked behind the hive as well. And this little bee will probably go up there. I decided to wait on the last two bees because I don't think they're actually going to be on the cake. Now for my background, I'm using some Blissful Blossoms paper and I'm using the postage rectangle to cut it out. And then I decided I didn't want white peeking out behind it. I wanted purple. I wanted to bring that purple that I have in the cake plate in there a little bit more. So I cut a piece of Spiffy Speckles paper. I'm just going to put this onto the card base first, and then that will peek out around the edges behind my postage rectangle. I just think this is a really fun paper. I love the little vines. I think it goes great with the bees. And before I put my cake on there, I need some honey splatters on the background too, but I don't want big splatters. I don't want to distract from my cake, so I'm going with gold splatters, of course. So while that splatter dries, I'm going to stamp my sentiment using this bold happy birthday stamp from the All the Party Hat stamp set. I'm stamping this on a sentiment banner cut out of peach cardstock, and I'm using this because the sentiments in High Five, even though they're cute and punny, they're small fonts, and I wanted a big bold font to go with my cake. I've put foam tape all over the back of my cake, my banner, my two little bees, and I am ready to assemble all this onto my card. I'm just going to add one more little foam square at the bottom to support that cut line in the cake plate. And then I'm going to pop this right in the center. I'm using my banner as a guide to make sure I have it high enough so I have space for this at the bottom. Then I can put my sentiment right below my cake. I also think it would be cute to have a sentiment that says "You're so sweet" or "You're sweet as honey," whatever sentiment you need for the occasion. And then I'm adding my little bees. Of course, mine's a birthday card because the little bees have on birthday hats and that little party horn. I thought about this one being down on the cake, but I decided I wanted it up towards the top and not covering up my little honey splatters. And then finally, the glitter. I'm adding glitter to the wings of the bees, to the honey dipper there, the little decorations on the hive. And then I just went through and added a few dots of glitter just on the cake, just so there's some sparkle on the cake as well. I know we have that shiny honey and we have those honeycombs, but I wanted some other little dots of glitter. And here is that finished card. I love how it turned out. I love that shimmery shine of the honey ganache. I think it's perfect. So my other card today uses the butterflies, and you could, of course, use the new I Like Big Butterflies and make it cutesy, but I decided to go a little more elegant. So I'm using the butterfly and the little frame butterfly dies. These are from the Magic Iris Butterfly Wreath add-on. And by the way, these gold butterflies would look so pretty on the wreath. But today I'm just using them individually so that I can decorate my cake. And I'll talk about the colors of cardstock here in a little bit, but first I want to cut my background. This is from the Blissful Blossoms collection. This is from a 12 by 12, and I like this green because this one in particular has the most color with the flowers, and I thought that this went really well with the pastels of my cake. So I just cut that out with the largest outside in stitch rectangle, and we're going to set that aside and work on our cake. So this is a 2-layer cake. I have the small layer of the cake and the big one. I've already cut them out using the Build a Cake die. And I want to make this look like a gradient, so it's darker at the bottom and lighter at the top. I did look up some butterfly cakes and was inspired by some colors that I saw. And so there was one that was a gradient from purple to pink, and that's what inspired this. So this layer is cut out of blush cardstock, and I'm using Peachy Keen to add in my color from the bottom, pulling it towards the top. And I know there's kind of that harsh edge there, but that's going to be covered up by our icing. Now the big layer at the bottom, this is cut out of lavender cardstock, and I'm using grape jelly ink to put in that gradient. This one I have a lot more space to work with, so I'm putting a light layer down first, and then you can see I'm adding even more at the bottom. Again, I am getting that harsh edge, but we're going to have icing to cover that up, and it's going to look great. So I'm just adding a little bit more, and this smooths out once it kind of absorbs into the cardstock. Now I wanted to add some texture to the cake to go along with my gradient look, but I wanted them to be small metallic splatters, so I'm going to flick it off a block so I get some smaller splatters versus large droplets. And this is going to add some really fun shimmer, so when I pick this up, you're going to kind of see it there, very fine. I'll set those aside to dry while I work on my sentiment. Now I am using the I Like Big Butterfly set for my sentiment because I love these scripty sentiments that are in this set. So I'm stamping out "Have a beautiful day" and I'm adding that little exclamation point. And the sentiment is stamped on speckled eggshell cardstock, so it's kind of that more creamy, softer color. And I can line up my sentiment banner die and cut this out. So now I'm ready to start assembling my cake. So I have my large layer here and my cake plate. It is cut from some narwhal cardstock. Then I can add my icing at the bottom, and I cut white, but I also cut white sparkle, and of course I went with the pixie dust white sparkle cardstock for the icing. Then I can add my small layer on top. And then for the icing for the small layer, it is the same die. You just have to take it and cut off 2 of those little icing poofs, and it will be the perfect length. And you can kind of see how when we add this icing in, it covers up that dark part of our inking. It lightens it up and really gives it a pastel look. So now on to my butterflies. I have the solid pieces cut from lilac cardstock and peach cardstock, so about a shade lighter than the cake. And then I have that metallic gold for the layer on top. And I want to be able to bend these and give them a really cool three-dimensional look. And I want the solid piece to act separately from the outline piece. So I am only putting them together with a little dot of glue in the center. And I'm gonna let these sit for a minute, let that glue kind of dry before I start to kind of bend them and manipulate them. And I found that it's easy to hold it with my tweezers right in the center where I want everything to stay connected and just bend those wings up from the body. You can see there that really cool look that you get, especially when they're separate. They kind of cast a shadow on that colored piece and just look really cool. So I'll do the same thing to all of these so I have a whole bunch of dimensional butterflies. Now I'm ready to start putting my card together, so I'm starting with that background, and of course I use that outside in stitch rectangle so we have that white border around it. Then for my cake and my sentiment banner, I'm going to pop all of this up. So I'm adding a strip of foam behind the sentiment banner. And since we have a two-tiered cake, this is going to be right at the bottom of this rectangle. And then I will add foam all over the back of my cake and pop that right onto the card. And now I'm ready to add my butterflies, which really made this come to life. So the two peach colored butterflies will be on the top layer, on the pink, and the purple ones will be on the bottom cake layer. So we have butterflies that match the color of the cake that they're on. And I'm just adding these with a little dot of glue in the center right behind the body as well because I want them to keep that three-dimensional popped up look that we got by kind of bending and manipulating the paper. This little one at the top, he's not really on the cake, so I added a small strip of foam to the body and I'll just pop him right above the cake because I still want him popped up just like everything else. And then finally, my last embellishment are some round sequins using the sequin mixed dye and some gold sparkle cardstock. When I was looking at photos for inspiration, some of the cakes had large metallic gold spheres on it, like sprinkles, and I thought this gave the same kind of look with those circular sequins. So once I figure out where I want them on my cake, I'm just going to go through and draw them back into place with a little bit of liquid glue. I kind of just stuck to the cake initially, but I did end up adding a few more kind of off the cake so that it kind of expands the celebration off into the background. So just three, one at the top and then one on each side. And then here is that finished cake. I just think it turned out so beautiful. I know it says have a beautiful day, but I think this would make a beautiful wedding card as well. Especially you could change the colors up to match the couple's wedding. And then let's take a look at the two together. I love that they're both springy but so different. We have cutesy bees and beautiful butterflies. I hope this has inspired you to create some spring cakes. Thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye.